computers and video games. Now they go pretty well with one another, but what I've noticed is that with the more computers that I have, the less time I actually spend using said computer to just sit down and play some kind of video game, whether it be on Steam or something directly installed on this Windows XP machine. I just don't really use these systems as compared to like in the past when I had less computers and I actually played more games on the ones that I had. Now, I will say that I do use these systems. This one is currently being used mainly like a Windows server type of thing. This one is, of course, the retro Windows XP tower, and this is like the mobile workstation of this. So I have some different applications to test out hard drives. Basically just, using this for testing and, some other things as well. As for actual games, I don't really spend a lot of time on this, and it's partially due to the fact that a lot of these systems don't really have much storage. Like, these do have SSDs, but they're only 128 gigabytes in size. It's enough for basic testing. Like, to actually install a video game, unless it's some kind of like super light title, yeah, it really can't do much. Of course, a lot of the time I'm also using the retro Mac systems, so that's also kind of its own separate thing. But even on these systems, I don't necessarily play a lot of games. I do have a couple of titles installed on these, but just like with the Windows side of things, it's more of like retro applications and I guess web browsing and other things like that, server-related tasks, but nothing just for, having fun with video games. Now, even though I do have storage available, most of it is also being used on the server-related things, so I don't really have many usable external drives, usable SSDs to just have game files. So I'm basically just working with the internal storage on the computer itself, but I decided to finally change all that and set up some kind of external drive to use between these systems, because it would also be pretty cool to actually test out how well these systems can game, at least for Steam, because we do of course use older technologies. Like, these are the newest systems in the setup here, and these are still like, what, a decade old now, because I believe this is 2016 and that's 2014. Still plenty usable, but definitely not modern at all. And of course, the external Steam game drive is going to be the exact same thing because it's going to be a hard drive. But this is no ordinary hard drive. This is probably like the best you could use, at least for an older drive, and still call it a game drive, because just look at it. You can already see that there is something weird going on about this drive, and it's really cool. This is the Western Digital Velociraptor trademark hard drive, and even though this is only a 300 gigabyte drive, which I know is like barely enough for modern Steam titles, this doesn't spin at 5400 or 7200 RPM. This spins at 10,000 RPM. 10,000 RPM, and it's a hard drive from 2008. Now, how crazy is that? Even though it's not an SSD, this is like next level performance, at least for an ancient hard drive. And it's also really cool to see that this drive specifically was made on May 30th, 2008. And right now, it's May 30th. So this hard drive actually has a birthday right now, and what better way to celebrate it than by actually installing some Steam games. Even though this is not like the most ultimate setup that you'll see nowadays, if you had this back in 2008, this would have been like next level. Now this right here is still hosted on the Western Digital website itself, and what's really cool to see is that because it is from 2008, it's as if it's still a brand new product. So it's engineered for maximum speed. It's the newest member of our unique class of 10,000 RPM SATA hard drives. Even though it's not like, 6 gigabits per second, it has 16 megabytes of cache, and apparently it's up to 35% faster compared to the WD Raptor drive, which was before this. Designed and manufactured for mission-critical enterprise-class standards, which is cool to see. It has double the capacity. State-of-the-art technology results in twice the capacity compared to the older drive, so I guess instead of 150, it's 300 gigabytes. And the heatsink itself is actually called the Ice Pack, which is trademarked. It also has rotary acceleration feed forward, which is trademarked. And it optimizes operation and performance when the drives are used in vibration-prone multi-drive chassis. So if you have like multiple of these, which would also be really cool, then I guess it helps somehow. And last but not least, we also have Secure Park, which is also trademarked. Basically, it just parks the actual drive heads when it spins up, spins down, or when it's off. So this ensures that the recording head never touches the disk surface, resulting in improved long-term reliability and increased drive protection when the chassis is moved. And we've got all of this awesome information, such as works with Windows Vista, designed for Microsoft Windows XP and Windows 2000, even Windows Server 2003, but it is still just a SATA hard drive, so you're able to use it with anything that can use SATA. Honestly, considering the speed of this hard drive, it's not that loud. There are older IDE and even older SATA drives that are far noisier compared to this, and they are slower at 5400 or 7200 RPM. So this being faster and somehow quieter is really cool. So the hard drive itself is detected by the HP, which is awesome, and even though this system is capable of USB 3 speeds as well as Thunderbolt, because yeah, this has 2 Thunderbolt ports. We don't have anything fancy for the hard drive itself. I don't have like a USB 3 or Thunderbolt enclosure for this. I don't have, or even just like a cable for this. The only cable that I do have is just a standard USB to SATA, and in this case it can also support IDE drives. But yeah, it's not going to be like a super fast connection. I mean, it is a hard drive, so it's not like I'm going to be expecting SSD speeds anyways, but I guess this just further enhances that 2008 experience because all the budget went to the hard drive, and this is what we're left with. So here we have the hard drive within disk management. Obviously, it still says unknown because we need to set it up, and even though I could probably get away with GUID partitioning, I do want to select MBR, Master Boot Record, so that way I just have compatibility for older systems, because not every single older Windows machine can work with GUID. So with this, we just need to select on OK here. Incorrect function, or not, I guess. Gee, thanks. Okay, it seems like it was just a connection issue because, as usual, unplugging and replugging and everything fixes the problem. So this time, we have the hard drive for real because now it actually shows the storage. We still need to initialize it though, so let's go ahead and do MBR like I said. And with it initialized, we can now do a simple volume. It's just going to be the one partition. And the drive letter, I will go with W because it's a Western Digital drive, NTFS, default, and as for this, WD Velociraptor because that's what it is and it sounds awesome. Now how's that for the finishing touch? We even have the trademark right here because, I mean, that's what it says on the hard drive, and like I said, it looks cool. So let's go ahead and just continue with the quick format here. And there it is, WD Velociraptor, trademark. So here it is within File Explorer, and if we take a look at Crystal Disk Info, it still says it's in good health, despite it being on for 141,000 hours. Dude, 16 years of power on hours? That's insane. And while the hard drive is still empty, I'm going to run Crystal Disk Mark real quick. And it's definitely making hard drive sounds, which is a good sign. Probably not going to be the fastest connection because, again, of the, USB cable adapter solution here, but if it works, it works. To keep the temperatures in check on our high-tech hard drive, we also have a high-tech computer fan. Now this is a Thermaltake USB external PC fan, and it's really awesome. Honestly, it would be cool to have even more of these, but I will say that I've had this one in service for a long time, and I've actually removed it from service. Honestly, I don't know how long it's been, but basically, it's just sitting around. It's not doing anything right now. So what better way to use it than by actually using it with the ice pack? Trademarked, of course, because everything is trademarked. But yeah, use it alongside the ice pack because this would just make it infinitely more cool to the touch and, optimize performance. Because that's all we're doing here. We're optimizing performance with our 10,000 RPM hard drive. Check out this performance because, yeah, Honestly, it might be because of the cable, it also might be because of the slower SATA standard, but honestly, I just want to see how well this works, and who knows, it actually might work well, especially if we use it in something like an actual desktop with a proper SATA connection. So with our super high-tech cooling solution here, what better way to start off than by installing GTA 5, because why not install something that's going to take up a third of the drive? Dude, this is how it feels to have no USB 3 and gaming as if it's the 2010s again with budget hardware. Finally! It's done! Now, I'm fully expecting that the hard drive itself is going to be the main bottleneck on this setup, because why wouldn't it be? It's a hard drive powered with just a standard USB cable, while the rest of the setup here is still plenty capable. I mean, even though it is an older system, it is called a mobile workstation. We have an i7-6700HQ processor clocked in at 2.6 GHz, and not only that, we have 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is still plenty usable. And on top of that, we actually have 2 free available RAM slots that are not even being used right now. So we have further upgrade potential with this. Now, it is only clocked in at 2133 MHz, but still, 16 gigabytes of RAM within a laptop. Of course, we do have the SSD as the main boot drive, but again, because of the storage limitations, I can't install the game directly on this because it's basically going to fill up the entire drive anyways. And we do also have the Intel HD Graphics 530 for the integrated chipset, but we do also have a proper GPU, the NVIDIA Quadro M1000M. So even though it's not like a dedicated GeForce from the time, it's still a dedicated GPU within a laptop. So we do still have to go through the setup here because it's the Rockstar thing, but we'll just wait for this to finish and then see how long it'll take. So if we go into graphics here, the game actually loaded, and we have it set to full screen, 1920 by 1080. We have plenty of video memory to work with. Right now these are set to off. I'm going to leave them as is. So according to the recording, it seems like it only took around 30 seconds to start the benchmark. And so far, the system itself is running really well. I mean, averaging like what, 40 something FPS. I actually can't believe how well it's running right now. And I know the benchmarks are one thing and in-game performance is another, but I was expecting missing graphics and it just wouldn't load properly. It's actually usable. Yeah, so it seems like it's averaging around high 30s, low 40s FPS, which I know isn't like a constant 60 FPS, but for a decade-old laptop with a hard drive from 2008, dude, it's working. And it also seems like the overlay is pretty accurate with the FPS as well, with the GPU basically being maxed out at 100% usage, so it is making use of that. Now this should also be a good test to see how well it'll load graphics, because in some cases I've seen how sometimes there'll just be a missing road texture, but I really don't see anything wrong with this. Okay, I cannot believe how well this is actually working. So we have the activity monitor over here for the hard drive, and okay, if I can remember how to play this game, we can see how well it'll load. Okay, I seriously, I'm still kinda in shock of how well this is working. So this will be a good test to see. As I was saying, this is going to be a good test to see how well the textures are going to load. And we are actually averaging a better FPS compared to the benchmarks. It's like averaging around 60 FPS. And the hard drive is definitely putting in work here, but it's not having any issues at all. Honestly, I could just sit here and play the game like this because, like, this is old hardware and it's playing just fine. I mean, it's technically not that old, but, like, compared to modern hardware, it is. Now, even though it did take a long time for it to install, now that it's actually on the hard drive, it really doesn't have any problems. And as we make our getaway here, honestly, like I said, I still cannot believe how well this is working. And we might as well see how long it'll take to load to another character here. Looks like it was definitely worth it because now I actually have a copy of this game to use on whatever system. Yeah, so this is like a higher traffic environment. Again, another good way to test out the hard drive. But I don't see any issues with missing textures. And it also does help out that we are using this HP, not just some kind of like budget machine from the late 2000s or something like that, but seems like the GPU is constantly putting in the work as well because it's usually maxed out, but for the CPU it's no problem at all. I wouldn't be surprised as well if it's because of the RAM on this system as to why it's loading so well. It's probably able to buffer a lot more within like the RAM itself, so that way it can load the world faster. But clearly the hard drive is still, you know, working based on Activity Monitor here. Not Activity Monitor, Task Manager. You know, it's not a Mac. In a world of solid-state storage, does it still make sense to have a hard drive? Honestly, it does, because, I mean, as you saw, this drive from 2008 can still perform great, and modern hard drives have had a lot of improvements since then, like, you know, more cache, faster SATA speeds, and even though it may not be 10,000 RPM, it'll still work great as an external game drive as long as you don't need constant read and write speeds. Now, there is still going to be a huge difference between using a hard drive and an SSD as your main boot drive for the operating system. Like, if you use an older version of Windows or macOS with a hard drive, it's going to run great. But if you use something newer like Windows 10, Windows 11, or newer versions of, you know, macOS or whatever else, then an SSD is of course going to be just more optimal because that's just how it is nowadays. But if this setup can perform great with an SSD solution, like within the boot drive itself, then it does make sense to have a spare drive like this, at the very least just for storage, because hard drives themselves can provide a lot of storage and it's not going to be like the same cost-wise as a larger capacity SSD. So as long as the system itself can keep up with whatever game you're playing, then yeah, this will work great. It's also going to be even better if you use something like a USB 3 connection or Thunderbolt or whatever else, like a proper enclosure for a fast hard drive. So now that I have a proper external Steam game drive, it also means that I have other systems that I can test out games such as GTA 5 with. So instead of being bottlenecked by the lack of storage, now we can actually try to see how well an older system can play whatever game. If you want to see even more gameplay testing in the future, then consider subscribing because this has provided a lot of future potential, and in general, it's just going to be really awesome. If you enjoyed today's video, then consider leaving a thumbs up. You know, there's a lot of awesome content on the channel featuring this Dell Optiplex, and just a whole bunch of Macintosh stuff. But now we're going to be doing even more with awesome gameplay, just benchmarks, and hardware performance. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.